All right, welcome to Conversations with Educators. I'm your host, Jerome Ellison, and today I have a special guest, educator, leader in the community, CEO and founder of OSG, Dennis Mckesey. Thank you, Dennis, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Jerome, thank you for having me, man. I'm really a fan of the work that you're doing. I'm really looking forward to chopping it up with you this morning.
Nice, nice. So I want to start with a quick game. This game is called Pass or Fail. So I'm going to give you a topic and you tell me whether you're going to pass it or fail it based on how you feel about that topic. So pass or fail. This topic is remote learning. Would you pass it or would you fail it?
Pass it.
Pass it. Why?
Well, I think primarily because, this is what we're doing right now, aren't we? We're communicating remotely and virtually as we speak. I think it's just another thing to learn. And I think that's the power of education, is that there are things that we don't know or we haven't mastered, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be exposed to it. And as educators, I am most certainly open to learning new things each and every day.
I love that. And I think the hardest thing that me talking to a lot of educators, most educators in my experience that I've spoken to about remote learning feel like the reason why it has a bad reputation is because it was done poorly. It wasn't planned correctly. So the first time it was launched, so many people have a bad experience with it. So that's why a lot of us are like, let's not go back to remote learning at all. Let's erase it completely. But some teachers feel like if it was planned correctly and we would do it with some experience and have the right resources, it could be a successful way. Maybe not all the way remote, but to supplement what's done in the school.
Well, it's powerful, though, that you say that. But again, in everything that we've ever really done well, there's the introduction to it has somewhat been a bit faulty, right? So if you and I are going to the gym and we wanted to get big, we wanted to really work out, like, it's not just simply going to the gym, right? But that's what we do because we just want to get started, because we know we have to address this issue of muscle and weight loss or whatever it has to be. And the point of it being, every one of us don't always walk into a plan. Sometimes a plan is actually developed while we're in the midst of it. And I know sometimes it doesn't always feel good. It doesn't feel good that, again, we go to the gym for five years straight until we get that aha moment, like, oh, wait a minute. And we're supposed to eat clean too. Oh, and we're supposed to increase protein. Oh, and it would even be better if we went 5 days a week versus 2 days a week. So it's things that I think educators, we know intuitively, this is how people grow. Is through some things is through trial and error. Some things happen like that. And we're talking about a situation that happened in this country that none of us have had any experiences. No one living has had the experience of dealing with. And so that's not the easiest of things. And so, yeah, I'm always of the understanding of how people feel emotionally about things. I truly am. But there's another side of me of saying, as educators, we should know better than that. And we should understand that innovation is part of education, and it should have been part of education well before the pandemic.
Great point. Great point. And we were talking offline as well. And I feel like in education, that happens a lot. A lot of times we're so reactive to situations instead of proactive. I think if we can be more forward thinking and more progressive in terms of seeing what technologies and what is out there are coming and how we can implement it early on in the system, I think that will be set us up for more success.
100%. I mean, you and I talked again offline, and I was saying that, during this pandemic, I was made more aware of the video conferencing component of the work that I do as a consultant, speaking with principals and coaching principals and school leaders from across the country. I never even thought to use video conferencing because I always felt that being in person was even the most impactful way. And I'm not saying that either or is better than the other, but it could have been a hybrid, right? And so when we think about our preparedness to these type of scenarios, we can't be mad at somebody else for forcing us to do something that we should have been doing a long time ago. We're talking about a pandemic hit in 2019, 2020. Why are we now thinking about ways to use remote learning to benefit children and their growth in academics? It just makes no sense to me. And I think that, what you just said is important, and we got to still put a pin in that, is that it's us though, right? We as educators could have been more prepared for this, and maybe it wouldn't feel so awkward to try these new innovations if we were already being innovative and trying new things before this.
True, so true. All right, so let's get started. So I wanna ask my first question. So when did you know you wanted to become an educator and why?
Well, I kind of grew up, I grew up really enjoying school. Like I really loved school. Um, but I really didn't have a prototype, or I didn't have someone who was in my family who was an educator. It really wasn't. I go back to
Same.
um, enjoying all aspects of school and felt like there were certain teachers who made an impact on my life, people that I won't ever forget.
Mhm.
And so as I grew up, I think I always knew I had something to give back to people. I just didn't know what it was. And then as I, went off to college, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, which many of us, especially people of color, don't always
Yeah.
know what we want to do because we don't always have right in front of us the living examples of some of the other opportunities out there.
Mhm.
So going to college, I'm still thinking, well, am I going to be an accountant? Everybody, all of us, we always want to be accountants because we want to make a lot of money, right?
Exactly.
So that was the whole concept behind that. And then I would say when I got to my second year in college, one of my advisors, his name was Jim McGowan. I'll never forget
Mhm.
Jim. Big, bulky,
Mhm.
broad white man with red hair and a red
Mhm.
beard. And he was always so hands on with all of us. And he was my advisor. He was always
Mhm.
hands on with us. And one day he said, Dennis, you're really good with people. Would you even consider possibly even getting into education?
Mhm.
I said, Jim, at this point, I'm not against it. I said, I just didn't never think about it before because I didn't really have educators in my family to say, oh yeah, I want to be an educator. And so from that point forward, when Jim said, that's what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna help you to design your schedule, your classes, so that you can get a little bit more exposure, and you'll probably
Mhm.
see what I've been showing you. And so I shifted from I shifted to a behavioral science major, which really at that point, my college, which is Mercy College here in New York, didn't have didn't have an education major, but it
Mhm.
had behavioral science, which most of the courses were that of
Mhm.
education. So I went down that path and it was just like something instant. Like I was like, oh, wait a minute, I love this here. And just kind of going that route, just starting there, I felt it was such an empowering conversation that I had with Jim. And so when he shared that and I gave it a shot, I said, "This is where I want to go. This is where I want to be." Now, again, we'll talk about it over the duration of this chat. That I didn't really know what that meant though. I didn't know. I just felt like, wait a minute, I have the opportunity to transform minds, and that was all I thought about.
Mhm.
I didn't know and think about anything else at that point, and so I basically pursued the degree, and then also got my behavioral science degree, and then I also then got my certification in education.
Nice, nice. I mean, that's great. I think for me, I think you touch on so many great points. That's what I think I love about you as well is that point about it's always in my experience talking to teachers, it's always someone, whether it's a teacher, an advisor, someone who sees something in you and lets you know that you have those skills that can help you become an educator. And for us, not having enough Black and brown educators in the school system, and especially not having enough male Black and brown educators in the school system, I think it has to come from us being exposed to it early on and seeing that, having that experience working with kids and seeing that we have those skills and we want to get into the field. But then something that you guys do in OSG that's great is then having those mentors and supports to guide you through the process, right? Because even for the Black and brown educators who get into the system, a lot of us burn out and leave because we don't have those mentors. We don't have those people who've been through those experiences that can talk us through them to help us overcome some of the challenges that we face as people of color and men of color in the system. So I think that's what's great about what you do.
But then, Jerome, the other part that people must understand is that we've been talking about the lack of Black and brown
Forever.
educators forever, right? I'll give you a quick story. So I was part of a panel of some very experienced and seasoned leaders, school leaders, as well as community leaders during the pandemic. And it was a very powerful time sitting there talking, sitting at the feet of some of this country's most influential people. Um, And one of the things they asked me was, Dennis, the system, man, the system is really failing our kids, and we're not really, we're not seeing the growth that we want to, and things like that. And the question came up was like, what do we need to do about it? And I said, first and foremost, in all due respect to everything that you all said, you know how I truly feel about each one of you here on this panel. But I need you all to understand something. The reason why this problem still exists is because you guys didn't fix it. You guys were the generation before me who knew that this problem existed and didn't do enough to fix it. When I became a school leader, I recognized that there weren't enough men in my school. I understood that I didn't have a pool of people to pull from, but I did know that there was a surrounding community there in Harlem of people that I could figure out, you know what, if I can give them an opportunity, will they be the next educators that I'm trying to mold? Yeah. And so when I became a principal there in Harlem, that was one of my biggest pushes, is that I would even tell my staff, if you know any young brothers out here who don't have, direction, who may, hopefully don't have a felony or anything like that, who really just wants to figure out what they want to do, send them to come see me. And they would come to the school. And, again, it's funny because those same dudes who you saw on the street, those same dudes, I didn't even need to tell them to come with a shirt and tie. They came with a shirt and tie because they knew that this was an opportunity for them to come holler at me about being about the next phase of their life. And so I would interview them and talk to them, and I would see that there was always this lack of knowledge that they could even get into education because they didn't have a Jim McGowan who told them that. Right? There are people telling them something, but they didn't always tell them what Jim told me. And so when they would come to me, the only thing I would say at the conclusion of our meeting and our conversation is like, I need you to be willing to come to work every day with a shirt and tie. I said, I come to work every day in a suit. I said, we are living examples for our young people. And I said, the second requirement is that you're going to be willing to go back to school. I'll help you in any way that I can to connect you to colleges or connect you to scholarships and stuff like that. But I need those things to be commitments. And lo and behold, at that particular time when I was a principal, I probably went from about 20% male staff to almost 40% male staff that were willing to go back to school with people of color and that was willing to understand that we are the change agents. And so I give you that in a roundabout way of me saying is like, if there's not enough Black educators in this country, are we going to be saying the same thing 30 years from now when we're the ones who have control of it? Like, you're an administrator now. Yep. If you think that this is a problem and we haven't solved it, then okay, you have the power of the resume at this point. You can go look and find what you're looking for. And I think we just got to get to the point where the things that we know that have been wrong with education, or we feel have been wrong with education for decades, and they're in a century, if we can't fix them, then chances are, why are we still talking about it? Why are we still talking about it? So I'm just of that mindset right now, is that the reason why much of that doesn't exist is because they don't get to see the Jeromes. They don't get to see the Dennis Mckeseys, the Principal Akbar Cooks in Newark, New Jersey, the Dr. Anissa Riley's from the Bronx, and people who are looking just like you and I, who wearing a hoodie, wearing a blue cap, and saying, yo, wait a minute, I could be an educator and stay myself? Yes, you can. That's it. So we are the living examples. And so, that's why I'm proud of the work that you're doing and being able to get the message out there about the authenticity of being an educator. And so the more real we are about what this is, and I think we could, at that point, attract more people just like us. We can replicate ourselves to as many people as we choose if we stop making an excuse. They just don't exist.
I love that. That's so real. As we know, it's not an easy job being an educator, right? So I will ask you this: what was your most challenging, most difficult moment you've experienced as an educator, and how did you overcome that?
I think, believe it or not, one of the more challenging things, it may not necessarily be directly about the job itself, but just maybe the preparation of becoming an educator. Going to college, going to undergrad, going to postgrad, working on my doctorate, which I'll be finished with my doctorate in, matter of fact, next month. Nice. I've been working on my doctorate now as well. Thank you. And I think it's just a preparation, man. Going to school, devoting so much time to improving myself while at the same time working a job is a challenge. But we understand that that's where we are with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we as educators get to the point where we don't want to learn anymore, and then it becomes challenging, and this is tiresome and cumbersome, why do we keep doing this? Then my thing is we can't necessarily transform the minds of young people who feel the same exact way, right? They feel the same way.
Same way.
So I feel right now the most challenging part is just again the advancement of the knowledge, because you always got to be learning. You always got to come up with the new and innovative ways. And so, I just was talking to the OSG family the other day, and I said the two things out of the pandemic that we all should have kept doing that some people didn't keep doing, which was flexible scheduling and remote hybrid learning. That should have kept going. But what happened was most of us, once we thought the pandemic was over, we stopped learning about those things. We stopped implementing those things, so that now it's like starting all over again. Like, oh man, now we got to go back to remote learning. Oh, it didn't work. It didn't do this. It didn't do that. Nah, but how much advancement has taken place in both of those areas since the pandemic and since the start of the school year, when many of us were going back into school. So I just think the most challenging part is just continuing to learn while you're working a very high stress level job that requires undivided attention so much and stuff like that. And knowing that many of us got to go home to families and other responsibilities as well. So I think that's really the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on the point that you made, right, with coming from the pandemic. And I think even we often say in education, right, college and career readiness, right? But as we see in most careers and most jobs out now in the world, they're either letting their workers go fully remote or some kind of hybrid system, right? So we're really preparing kids for what they're going to experience 10, 15, 20 years down the line. They're going to have some times where they're working remotely at home and they're going to be in an office working as well, right? And if we can set that up where we're giving them those experiences and getting them through those obstacles now and giving them that exposure, then we're preparing them for college and career readiness. That's what the world's moving toward.
So imagine if people heard that voice and heard what you just said 5 years ago. When the pandemic hit, we would have been in much better condition, right? But let me tell you, there are systems, there are schools that have been doing this before the pandemic. Wow. There were schools. I'll give you two quick examples. One of my, my middle son, my middle child, DJ went to a school in New Jersey, very, very, very prestigious school in Jersey, where literally those kids from the first time they went to school, they were coming home with an iPad.
Wow.
My son wasn't coming home with a book bag full of books. And mind you, this was 3 years ago. My son is now a senior in high school. He was coming home with that then, and I was like scratching my head, like, wait a minute. Yeah. Is he going to be learning, or is he going to just be on his iPad? And the reality of it, everything from his communication with the teacher to everything. So if a teacher was out, they would communicate via the iPad. Even if there was school had closed down for inclement weather, they were doing work remotely and things like that. So there was a level of preparation that some schools were involved in leading up to this thing. And so there was another experience but even just before, there was an experience that I had. I'm an avid golfer. A good friend of mine, Blaze, Elliott, and myself, we were down in Florida. We playing golf, and it was during the week. And so we're playing golf, and this father and his son asked, can they play with us? And we said, sure, come on, let's play with us. We went and we played golf. And probably about maybe 45 minutes into the round of golf, the young man asked us, he probably can't be no more than 11 or 12, came to us and said, do you mind if I fly my drone and maybe take some pictures of us while we're playing golf? He's like, absolutely not, man. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let me see what you're doing. And literally, we're playing golf, and the kid is flying a drone above our head, taking still shots, taking videos of us playing, and then he would bring it down and let us see, the camera and the video footage, and we're like, wow, that's so fly, man. Like, why we ain't? And mind you, this was about 3 to 4 years ago. I said, why aren't we doing this in these schools in the inner city? Yeah. So come to find out, as the kids continue, bright kid, great personality, just a superb kid all around. And he said to us, he was like, I only go to school 1 day a week. He says, I go to school 1 day a week to kind of get all my stuff and stuff like that. But most of my assignments are done online. And so it affords me an opportunity to play golf and to play soccer and to be involved in electronics and robotics and stuff like that, while at the same time teaching me independence. Now, this is a 12-year-old kid telling me this. Wow. And so what I'm saying is that there's parts of this country that have been doing this. And we obviously have another set of issues that we deal with in the inner city that forces us to believe that kids got to be in school all the time, because we think like, there's these food insecurities. There's issues where if we decide that kids can't go to school, they may not eat, and a few other things. I said, then let's address that issue then. Let's not keep saying that it's remote learning that's the problem, or hybrid learning that's the problem. Let's really go back and understand that there are people that before this pandemic was ahead of this curve and was able to prepare their children and prepare their community for things that we are now struggling with. And so we, all of us had a phone, so we all knew that we could communicate with family members out of state and out of country, whether it's through the WhatsApp or whether it's through FaceTime. So we knew that conferencing existed, but we did it more from an entertainment value rather than an education value. So I think it's just important that you and I continue to deliver the message that we are behind, not because of anything other than our own ignorance to what was happening around us.
Great point. Just to add one more thing on top, is this is often used as well, right? If they're not in school 5 days a week, then they're going to be out there and they're going to get into crime and so much violence out there. We don't know what's going to happen. But let's address those issues. Like you said, if we address that crime, then that will help us be more flexible with the scheduling, like you said.
Yeah, and like I said, that's the thing, right? And again, one of the things that I just read about, and shout out to Mayor Eric Adams.
Yeah, that's where I got it from too. Yeah.
And Chancellor David Banks is, what's so dope about the things that they're saying at this point is that there's really not a lot of science behind us just simply saying, let's go remote, right? And I respect that, because I think you can't just have a knee-jerk reaction to everything and say, oh, let's just change this, because then you change it, and we go back to what you mentioned earlier about how people feel like, oh, you just changed it on me. Like, how am I supposed to react to this stuff? I think there has to be a science to the decisions that we make as educators and things like that. And so let's look at the science. Let's truly look at the science as to what happens during learning loss. Is it really contributed to a computer, or is it contributed to maybe us teachers not having enough face time with kids? Like, what's the real reason for it to happen? But we can't arbitrarily decide that it just doesn't work because we don't like how it feels or how it makes us feel. So I think they're doing a great job of saying to us, listen, the one thing that I haven't heard them, either one of them, say yet is, that y'all can't try innovative ways. They basically, if a person doesn't tell me that I can't be creative, then guess what I should be? Creative.
Yeah.
Right? They're not telling you exactly how to make it work. They're just saying is make it work.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about true innovation, that's when things really work, is when you feel like, nobody didn't give me the answer. I did my own research, and this is what I'm going to implement in my schools. And so even talking about, let's not say you don't have to go fully remote. You don't have to go fully remote, but when children were back in school, we should have had remote days in our schools. Or hybrids in our schools, where the teacher would upload the work into Google Classroom or whatever platform, and basically while the children were in the classroom, just find a way to just facilitate for the day. Don't stand in front of them and teach like you always do. Don't try to run up to the smart board and teach. Give the kids the work, upload the work, and say get to work. Because isn't that where we're going right now? And when we talk about college and career readiness, it's the same thing. My college degree, my doctorate has been done 100% online. It was one of the things that I was most afraid of, because I didn't know. I thought I needed to be in front of people. But this right here has given me a unique opportunity to say, well, yo, D, you went almost 3 years to complete a doctorate completely online. And then now I can also say then I'm also having an interview and chat
Mm-hmm.
with you on the same platform, and then I'm also created, a
Mm-hmm.
non-for-profit organization like
Mm-hmm.
OSG on a particular platform. So I'm saying, let's not be so quick to be upset about remote learning, because if we use it properly,
Mm-hmm.
it's a game changer. It's a game changer for children. It's a game
Mm-hmm.
changer for the community. It's a game changer for the country as well as the world.
For sure.
Period.
For sure. For sure. Man, my next question is, all right, so we talked about the biggest challenge. What is the most memorable moment or the best moment you've had as an educator up to this point?
There's two that come to mind almost immediately. One of my students, from when I was a principal, and from kindergarten, this young man was like, he was all over the place, man, just a challenge to a lot of people. But because I had that behavioral science background, I was able to kind of assess it a little bit different and say, yeah, y'all willing to throw this kid away, but I'm not willing to throw the kid away. I know that there's some issues there that has become problematic for why this young man, is having these challenges. And he's not a special needs student, he's extremely bright, so I'm not putting him in special ed. I'm not kicking her out of my school. We're just going to have to learn how to deal with this. And throughout, from kindergarten all the way through high school, this kid was having these difficulties, like, just would have these spaz out moments, or at times we, be a bit argumentative with people. It just became one of those people that people didn't like. But I always loved this kid. I always loved this kid. And I knew he had challenges because when he was born, his mom and his dad was both locked up. Both of his fathers, both of his mom and dad was locked up. Then he went to live with his grandmother when he was a toddler. Then as he was growing up as an infant, the grandmother passed away. Here he's 3 years old. Here's a grandmother who he thinks is sleeping. He's playing with the grandmother. The grandmother, unfortunately, had passed away. Then, then next thing you know, then the aunt comes to get him. The aunt, who did an amazing job of raising him, had her challenges too. And so every step this kid took, there was another person where there was some separation that had taken place with him. And I think over a period of time, the separation anxiety began to build up in him. And so everything that he did was a reaction to that. And mom came out of prison, and things were starting to get better. But again, somewhere in this kid's mind, I truly believe that he felt like mom would probably go back to jail again, and then I would lose her, and then I got to alter my life once again, and blah blah blah, and that'd be it. So fast forward to high school, he leaves my school, because at that point I was no longer his principal. But many of the young men, and most of my students, referred to me as their father, like their dad. And so this kid would always say, "Yo, pops, I'm over here at this school, this prep school. I want you to come to my football game." Now, mind you, I wasn't even his principal no more, but I would stay in touch with him. And so long of that is, I would go to these games. I would bring my family to the games, and we just build an even stronger rapport, a stronger relationship with him. And he just started doing really, really well. And then he went off to college and, everything. And he had a son at an early age, and he called me about it and said, "Yo, pops, how could, what can I do?" And so I gave him the guidance. So we stayed very, very close. I was asked to come and do speaking and keynote speech down at the University of South Carolina, Beaufort. And one of the topic was about social emotional learning and just basically building rapport with young people. And so I called Jason. His name is Jason. I called Jason and said, "Yo, Jay, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to do me a 30 to 60 second clip that I can add into my into my presentation, so that people can see that now I'm not just talking, but it's real."
Yep.
He said to me, he said, "Yo, pops, I'm gonna do you one better." He says, "I'm down here in Columbia, South Carolina. I'll drive down there. I'll drive down to the University of South Carolina, Beaufort, and I can actually even speak, or I can even show myself, let people see that I'm real."
I'm real, yeah.
I said, "Jay, you know what? Come on down." Jay came down. I'm down in South Carolina. Nobody didn't know that Jason had come. So I'm sitting there and I'm going through the presentation and I'm showing pictures of Jason on my presentation, and you can see people starting to get really emotional. I'm talking about 500, 600, 700 people in the room, and I get to the last slide, and there's a picture of me and Jason at his football game when he's in high school, and I said, and now, to the audience, I said, and without any further ado, because I had Jason sit next to me, but nobody didn't know who he was. He was sitting off to the side. Okay. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I want to introduce you to Jason Williams. And when I said that and Jason stood up, the whole place went ballistic, and they were crying and everything like that, because at that point, what I was able to see was the fruits of my labor. Right? Most educators don't get to see it.
That's it.
From the seed blossoming into what it is. And so being able to watch me take them down memory lane and to show them or talk to them about what I did and what the results can be if you never give up on a student, and to be able to pull Jason out there, it was amazing, right? It was such an amazing experience that people were supposed to leave after that to go to another breakout room. Literally, they had to tell us, like, yo, you're gonna have to tell them to go to the other breakout room, because they would not leave the room, because they had to come up and talk to me and Jason, and they were so proud of Jason. And it was that thing that I think turned the corner for Jason to, made the turn so complete now, because now he's like, wow, these people, I actually now see where I came from and where I'm at right now and what could happen. And so now Jason's doing some really big things. He's heavily into real estate here in Jersey, doing some really big things. He is, selling homes to some of the biggest athletes and entertainers in the country as we speak. And he and I speak almost every other day. But that was probably the one that sticks out to me the most. And then another one on a quick reverse is one of my top students, my very top student, went all the way through high school and went to college. He went away to college, and unfortunately, life took a turn for him there, because he got involved in drugs and some petty crimes and stuff like that. So that was my top student. Went there, and literally his life was turned completely around. He started getting involved in crime and start building up a record of criminal activity and stuff like that. His mother and grandmother talked to me about it. I ended up finding him of where he was at. We talked, and matter of fact, we didn't talk initially because he ran from me, because he felt like, damn, like I let me down. Yeah. So he ran from me for a long time, for I would say about 2 years. And here's a kid that I was very, very close to. He ran for years. And what happened was, I got a phone call one afternoon driving home from work, maybe about a year and a half ago, a year ago. Got a FaceTime, and his name came up. I was like, wow, I hope he's all right. And here it is, he's calling me. His face is a little bit chunky and stuff like that. And he was like, Mr. Mckesey, I just wanted to call and tell you thank you. And I said, what happened, man? I said, I ain't spoke to you. I said, I was worried, like, why you kept running from me. He says, you're right, Mr. Mckesey, I didn't want to disappoint you, but currently I'm in a facility to clean up my act as far as the drugs and substance abuse and stuff like that. He says, I'm doing really, really well. He says, I think about you all the time. I think about the times you used to take me to play golf and everything. He said, those were the things when he hit rock bottom, he realized that, wait a minute, that's not what Mr. Mckesey taught me. And that's when he decided for himself that he was going to go into a long-term facility to actually clean himself up. And I just got a call from him. We just spoke in early December, where he celebrated his first year of being totally clean from substance abuse and stuff like that. So those two things, funny enough that they took two totally different paths, but at the same time, the realization of how impactful we could be if we don't give up. And so that's really, two of the success stories of, again, I could probably talk the whole afternoon, all the way to the afternoon about them, but these two, they really stick out to me.
Yeah, is Jason? What was the other name again?
Jason and Jonathan.
Jonathan and Jason. Shout out to Jason and Jonathan, man. It's always, when I talk to teachers, it's always the moment where, we work so hard, sometimes we don't see the fruits of our labor, especially with difficult children who are challenging. We work. When they come back and they can tell you things that you taught them and the impact you had on them, that's that motivation that keeps you going as your educator, because that's the fuel. That's like the thing that you got into the field to do. And it just gives you that fuel to keep going, you know? So
but that's where we could do better, is to realize is that all of us has had a story past on some level. There was always a segment in our lives where we didn't always do the right thing. We didn't always make the right decision, but we become very judgmental when we see other people do the same thing. And so as educators, let me let you all in a little secret. We've all had our issues. We've all had our moments when we did something stupid, you know, or did something that might have been challenging, right? And so the other thing that I really wanted to share with you briefly was, mind you, I did all of the things that I did in terms of getting my master's degree, getting my bachelor's, my master's, my doctorate. But people don't even know. Many people who know me know this though. Is I became a father at the age of 17. My last year in high school. My last year in high school, I became a dad. And you know, I remember going to tell my father, like, "Yo, pops, I'm about to have this baby." He was like, "All right, so you know what you got to do? Go ahead and be a business."
Be a man.
And that's all I really needed, right? And from that point forward, I've been raising my son, who's now 31, who's you know, ordained pastor, who's you know, running his own marketing company, just doing really good things. I'm saying that to say is that people would look at me and say, "Yo, how could you have a child at 17? Like, why are you having sex so early?" And all that. Listen, I ain't here to argue why it happened. I just got to do something about it now that it's a reality for me. And so if I would have used what everybody else said as rather than fuel for what I did, if I use it as an opportunity to feel like, "Oh, damn, I messed up," would I have been the success that I am today? So I use that as that fuel, because it was then that I realized I should most certainly move this agenda forward, which is life, by making a better way for my son and now the rest of my, you know, my children and my wife and my family. So that all happened early on in my life.
That's so real. And that goes back to what we said earlier, right? About educators, and our platforms do that, right? Educators being real and telling true stories about who they are, right? And being able to just be themselves. Because when students think that we're so perfect, or even as celebrities or whoever, we think that you're so perfect, your life is so perfect, you don't make any mistakes, then they think the only path to be successful is a perfect path, right? But when we show them that we're flawed individuals, we have our ups and downs, we've been through trials and tribulations, then they know that whatever you're going through, just know that if you handle it the right way, you can overcome that and overcome any obstacle and be who you want to be. But you got to be focused, and you got to know that life isn't hard, but it's always opportunities to do so.
Yeah. So I most certainly am. I am honored as an educator to know that I am flawed, right, and that I'm not perfect, and that I'm willing to always make myself better. You know, always trying to work harder at being the better me. And as I become the better me, I become the better educator. I become the better leader. I become, you know, the better dad and husband and everything else. So it's just important that we recognize that where we are as educators, we can move the agenda forward, but we got to realize that we got to stop complaining about what's wrong with the system and be the system that we want for these children. Because I've always said this, like, we use that word system, you know, it's a system, but really when it boils down to it, we are the system. We are the system. We give it power. It does nothing by itself. It does nothing by itself. And so the great educators always did what they felt was best for the system that impacted their children. And they found a way to make it work. And so I think if there is a message to educators in 2022, it's like right now we have an opportunity. Again, we're given another opportunity to innovate and create amazing opportunities for children in education. If we want to be mad about having to go remote versus come up with a unique way to provide those support for children, then you're gonna be miserable every day. It ain't gonna change just because we mad, right? You know, everybody feel like, yo, I could just be mad at it and throw this out there and throw this out there. Nobody don't care about that, man.
Nope.
Nobody don't care about that. Like, really, the system is going to be fixed once we realize we are the system, and we are the ones, as you said, gives it power, gives it energy, gives it life. A system by itself is just an inanimate object.
That's real. That's real. Last question, last thing. I call this one choose your teachers wisely. So all the great things that you've shared so far about how you've impacted so many teachers, educators, leaders. I want you to go back, and even students, I want you to go back to your childhood as a student growing up, right? Who was that teacher for you? Give them a shout out and tell us why. Which teacher had that positive impact on your life? Just one. I know it's hard, but just pick one.
Yeah. The first person that comes to mind is Miss Bracy. It was my fourth grade teacher, Miss Bracy. And at that time, what we had, she was my first teacher who showed us real tough love and what it meant to be. When I watched how she treated those of us who were really serious about education, how she treated us as independent thinkers, and at the same time, how she handled the other students who had their challenges within the community and really was, the behavioral problems at times, the way she handled them with love as well, and how she got us all to feel like we were all great students and great children, and that we can learn and achieve everything. I think it was that made Miss Bracy so special to all of us. Is because and I guarantee you, I can go to my best friend Lance Bigelow, and Lance was always a smart kid, but Lance had a troubled childhood, and we were in the class together, and we can both tell you at the ages of 48 right now that if you ask that question to him, he'll probably say the same thing, and it would say it probably for a different reason, and the reason would be what I said is she treated us, when we talk about true differentiation, she was able to master that, where she didn't punish me because of something that he did, and she didn't treat him because he wasn't who I was. Like, she gave us all the individual support that we needed to be successful, but understood that we all were different. We were all made differently. And so Ms. Bracy is somebody who I think, she's no longer with us, but she's somebody that I think we can all go back. Anybody who was in my fourth grade class can go back and say the impact that she made on all of us. And there was times that back then that she would also need to be. She would provide a level of discipline that none of us have ever forgotten. So that was sometimes necessary in what we were transformed into be. So shout out to Ms. Bracy, the whole Bracy lineage. Your mom most certainly made an impact on my life, and I'll never forget her for that.
Thank you, Ms. Gracie. So thank you, Dennis. I want to thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate your time. You share so many great gems, and so much information that people can learn and grow from. So thank you, and I definitely want to stay connected, because I think we're moving in the same wavelength, and I think we can do a lot of work to support each other. And I want to join your network, so let me know how I can.
Absolutely. So yeah, you just most certainly stay in touch with me as well, because I definitely think that there is a space within organizations such as OSG for every educator who truly wants an opportunity to be around like-minded individuals. And that's the key, is that we all hold each other at this high standard, so that there's nothing that you can tell me you can't do when you got a whole crew of people behind you saying, nah, we've already done it, and we continue to do it. So most certainly, it's important that people just know that organizations like this exist. It was just something that I pulled together as a result of the pandemic and just wanting to get people to communicate with one another. But it has definitely grown into and morphed into something that I didn't even dream possible. So shout out to the whole OSG family, our brother Dane Dash, and everybody else who's been tremendous supporters of the work that we've done, including Eric Adams and David Banks, who's also been guests on our weekly meetups and stuff like that as well. So shout out to everybody, and shout out to you, Brother James, that what you're doing is something special. And when you don't worry about the numbers, when you don't worry about how many people are there, eventually this gets into the hands of the right people. And so stay encouraged that you're doing the right thing, man. And I'm glad that you reached out to me on LinkedIn and just was very consistent about messaging me to remind me of our meeting this morning and stuff like that. So again, shout out to you. Congratulations on becoming an AP. I'm here for you in any way possible. So if you want to reach out, please do so. I'll send you an email with my number and stuff so you can stay in touch. So again, shout out to everybody here. If you want to find me, go on LinkedIn at Dennis Mckesey. If you want to go find what we're doing in OSG land, go over to the official OSG on Instagram. You'll find some very powerful videos that we've posted over the past couple of years.
Thank you guys for watching. Stay blessed, and remember, education over everything. Peace.
Salute.